Hey everybody. So to continue the discussion from last time, what I wanted to do is hone in on something as it relates to the during. One thing that I kind of glossed over that I'd like to highlight right now is the idea that the assumption is there's some control in the during, and that has an effect that will help us be in the before or get towards closer towards our goal of being in the before. The important idea there is an effective form of control. So if you punch somebody, you can't even get them to notice it. That's not an effective form of control. That's actually like kazushi, or unbalancing someone is one of our favorite methods of control that can be overlaid on just about any form of contact. Again, the point being that the control needs to be effective. And so when you say effective, you might say, well, how do I ensure something's effective? And so this really very cleanly ties a transition into the concept of advanced. And so in our definition of advanced, our word meaning relates to the idea that you're stacking concepts on one another, so that, let's say when we bridge with the opponent, when we perform a block or an ukewaza receiving technique, that when we touch them, we accomplish many goals with that touch. We put some pressure on them, we change them, we make sure we have leverage, all these things. So I've shared with the group kind of the first 9 principles that I teach in ukewaza, kind of in order. So the idea that those things become overlay concepts and turn a standard blocking technique into something much more advanced by overlaying at least 9 useful functions or additional values on top of just the idea that you're doing a bridging move operation. So here's the point. The point is this relates to self-defense. So the concept of self-defense being we have to defend the self and control the attacker. Let's do a little bit of math or gaming. Let's gamify this a little bit just to show exactly what we mean by stacking the odds or layering principles to create an advanced technique. So to give an example, over here, essentially I have a me versus him. Me being the good guy, him being the bad guy, me being the one who's defending against someone's attempted control. So I'm in a self-defense scenario, and right away, we should probably consider, chances are I'm going to be attacked by people who are bigger, stronger than me. I'm going to look like prey in comparison to them. So the idea that they would start out with some physical attribute development benefits over and above me would make a lot of sense. So let's assume that they're the attacker. They're starting in the before. So in the net, in a fight, we're talking about our chances to succeed. And so just on the basis of me being in the after and them being in the before, they have a positive, I have a minus, I'm reacting, they're acting without concern for their safety. Typically, they expect to impose their will. I'm having to deal with what they're trying to do, and if I'm going to do anything in the during, it's going to have a negative because I'm trying to do 2 things at one time. So my mind is divided. The mind really only does one thing at a time well. So let's assume right out of the gate, I'm in a bad position. I'm in the negative. And then let's assume they're stronger. Maybe they're highly aggressive. They have adrenaline, maybe some pain tolerance, some things. They're taller and longer, so they have a reach advantage. So let's add these up. Right out of the gate, we've got a +5 for the bad guy and a -2 for me out of the gate. Well, how do I then utilize training in martial arts to potentially come out of this scenario alive and safe? Well, we have to stack additional elements of training on top of that. So we talk about those ukewaza and ways of mitigating the attacker's strengths. So then we start stacking principles on top of what we have naturally. So let's assume I know how to apply strong versus weak well and consistently. Well, the good news is leverage can be a counter to strength. Leverage is a force multiplier for existing strength. So maybe my knowledge of application of strong versus weak helps overcome strength. So that gives me a +1. So now I'm only at a -1 versus 5. Man, that's a 7-point spread. I have a lot of making up to do with my training, right? So there's a +1, so now I'm at a -1. So what if I know unified body and can apply that well? I don't just use my arm for techniques like that comment in the Bubishi about the rat, a snake, or a cat catching a rat, the claws are the instrument of contact. The cat uses the body for the power. So the same idea here. We're going to utilize big muscles rather than small muscles. So we're going to be efficient about how we use our anatomy, which is inadequate compared to the strength over there, but at least we've got some other things to offset that. So unified body, we use our body well. We seek the center, so at least the center line, we're disrupting their center well. We're not just rotating them. Our power goes in deep. Our pushing and pulling maneuvers affect their center the way that we want. So that's a +1. We get to the flank, so we help offset the tool disparity, or create a tool disparity in our benefit. We keep the point on line for quick follow-up techniques. We use closest weapon, closest target. We fill the dead space, so we solve some of the timing problem created by being in the after. So now that when we block, we almost reflexively hit at the same time. So that's 7 to offset our 2, so we made up the spread. So now it's even. So I need all this training to offset what the bad guy has out of the gate. So these are good things to keep in mind when you're working on your skill development. It's a deep hole that we start in, potentially. So then add other things. Add short power development. And now you're at a +1 in the negative, or in the positive. So if we add short power, all of a sudden we've got a +6. -2 takes those 2 away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We've got a +1 there. So now we've got a 6 versus a 5. We actually have a decent chance of surviving that scenario. So this is exactly what we mean by the definition of advanced. The idea of advanced being any particular activity you perform in terms of control gives the attacker multiple problems to deal with. The problems are your leverage are overcoming my strength advantage. The problem for the bad guy with your unified body is you're small, but seemingly you feel strong. It's just because you're biomechanically using your tools better. Seeking the center, for some reason, you always know where my balance is, and you're affecting it in a way that keeps me occupied, so I'm not effective landing my punches. Flanking, I'm having a hard time getting my other hand around to where it's useful because you're on my side where my arm has a hard time reaching. Point on line, you hit me without ever drawing back. You seem to always be in a place to throw your next shot, and I don't know how you get that position so well. You're always hitting me with that hand that you blocked with, the hand that was in front, the hand that's closest to engagement. You reach out and you're touching me in ways that I thought, not possible. Fill the dead space. Your sense of timing is incredible. Every time you move, you're busy. There's no downtime between the things that you're doing. No chance for me to get my footing back. And then short power, when you hit me, well, you're actually able to do damage even from a short ways away, so you're not drawing back and then throwing these big haymakers or these big bombs. So that's the idea. That's what we mean, and that's why when we teach or we set up our curriculum, we say, well, even every block should implement all these principles and more, and we work on our short power so that we can deliver useful hits that are actually effective in interrupting the attacker's Zudo. Anyhow, in summary, the point being that acting in the during has to be efficient and effective. So the effectiveness is required in order to interrupt the attacker's Zudo loop. And then the idea that advanced is all about layering. And those layering of principles and effects keep the attacker so busy that you have a better chance of winning in a case where you may have started naturally in a real negative place with a 7-point spread, but through your training and being able to consistently and always apply these things reflexively and naturally in your karate movements, that you're able to make up for that and even exceed what an average untrained attacker might be able to bring to bear against you. So again, this is math, this is gamification, this isn't a guarantee of anything. This is just saying you had really bad odds in the beginning before being trained, and if you train well and progressively for skill development, you have a chance of succeeding and exceeding what's necessary to stay safe. And again, as teachers, to provide training that's progressive and useful to your students. Be curious what your thoughts are. Love your feedback. This makes sense or it doesn't. Ask me questions, and reread the 3 or 4 pages, I think maybe about 4 pages worth of discussion about advanced in the book, and let me know your thoughts. Thanks. Bye.